Episode 2 begins with Jinx underwater holding on to Silco's corpse. She mentions the Chem Barons warring for control and how Silco isn't there to put it all back together again. The scene shows how remorseful Jinx is over his death as she slowly loses her grip on him. He descends into the depths, with Jinx wondering what she's even supposed to do with herself. Silco fades from view, with one of his few lines being said. Have you had enough? He asks, emphasizing just how done with it all Jinx really is. After a second, she explodes in an anger attack, screaming and writhing in frustration. All in all, it's a pretty great scene, expressing how Jinx is drowning in loss, frustration, and confusion. Once again, Arcane has its symbolisms and themes represented wonderfully. The scene cuts to our second music video montage, opening with Silco sitting down at the head of a Chem Baron meeting. We watch as one by one, three of them disappear. Goldjaw first, Silco second, and Chainsaw Lady third. It focuses on Silco's throne, then shows the remaining barons squabbling over it, with Sevika, Silco's right hand, disappearing. The music drops, and we see the chaos of the Chem Barons battle over Zon, with Jinx in the center of all of it. Each faction is represented uniquely, with bowler hat guys, dominatrix people, and robot arm guys. Beyond their unique aesthetics, they're not characterized really in any meaningful way. We're never told why they dress this way, and their values and goals are never discussed. The goons of armies X, Y, and Z are at war. That is all. No, they will not be developed. Moving on. Now, I said this previously about the last montage. The music fits, the art is gorgeous, and the expressions portray their emotions perfectly. It's an excellent use of a montage. It sets the tone, summarizes some plot, expresses the characters involved, and doesn't undermine the world or its characters. Let's hope the rest of them do the same. So, does this montage do the same? I don't believe it does. It nails the tone, expresses some characters, but seems to undermine the world and summarizes rather than little a lot of the plot. The Chem Baron Wars, as I'm dubbing it, would be a massive event for all involved. For Piltover and Zon, this should have had major effects on the world, but we only really see a few key things come out of it. The orphan child that gets chased into Jinx, the Yordle guy only having three guys and an accountant, and the ease at which Piltover takes over Zon in Act 2, which contradicts the de-escalation in Episode 1, but we already went into that. Now, I feel like I'm writing the show myself with this third one too. I actually don't know if this has any relevance on the future events. I don't know if the Chem Baron Wars has an effect on the ease at which Piltover takes over Zon. I have no idea, because it's never mentioned again. As cool as this montage is, nothing of relevance really comes out of it. There's no character development beyond the biting of a hand, and the world building it attempts to do is contained within the montage itself. Even if it isn't contradictory, we don't really get to see any of it happen, which is a shame. It really is. I'd have loved a whole act watching Zon descend into chaos while Caitlyn and Vi observe its destruction in their search for Jinx. There's a part of me that believes that was the plan before they realized they needed to cram all this time into just one season. How else do you explain all the time spent with Smeech and the Overwatch squad, both having next to no relevance on anything by the end of the season? Beyond cameos, they could have easily been replaced with just random faces in the crowd. The montage feels like the forcing of what could have been a full act into not even 3 minutes. The phrase show don't tell comes to mind. Hope I don't need to explain that's not meant to be taken literally. This montage is telling, not showing. It's a much prettier and longer telling than the line Jinx has in the intro, but there you go. Now, I prefer this over a single line, but the core of the problem is still the same. Telling for an event like this hurts the believability of the world. It just makes it feel like a stage rather than a real place. It's kind of a shame. It really is, but we still got 30 minutes of this episode to get through, so let's just move on. In the montage, we get glimpses of a child running away from several bowler hat guys. Now, later on, we find out that this hat, this one specifically, is worn by the labor minor class, and as child labor is a pre established thing, I think it's a safe bet to say that this kid was probably a slave worker. I could tell you her name, but I think it's best to prove my point by refraining until the show tells us it. So for now, we'll just refer to her as the child. The child gets cornered, biting one of the goon's hands. She runs through a pipe to the outside and has to make a jump across the street. She almost makes it, clinging to the ledge for a bit before falling, landing on Jinx in the street below. Jinx's shimmer eyes flare, responding to the sudden impact, and the goons begin to climb down, getting ready to take the child. Sitting like Silco when Powder was quote unquote saved, Jinx's hood falls, revealing her face. The goons recognize her and, in shock, try to react. In that second of realization, Jinx draws and shoots all three, making for a badass closer to the music montage. Now, credit to the show here, paralleling Silco's protective sitting position is a nice touch. Once again, it shows that Arcane can still make great icing. Jinx begins talking while waving the gun around, and since this is her introductory scene, let's analyze what she says. You feel it? That buzzing behind your eyes? Because you know, in a moment, it could all... Kapsh. Best feeling in the world, kid. It pans to her wanted poster. Yep, that's me. You ever need to curse a sibling, or a family, or a society? My card, snapping her fingers at it and walking away. The child follows, and the scene ends. Alright, so what does this tell us? This is my interpretation, so I'd love to hear other takes, but the buzzing behind your eyes that could end at any second, being the best feeling in the world, would make sense representing Jinx's enjoyment of chaos, that adrenaline thrill that comes from a fight, or an explosion, or say, I don't know, the tearing apart of a gremlin. These moments of chaos make her feel alive, probably because it forces one to only focus on the here and now. There's no time for regrets, there's no time for sentimentality, there's no time for dwelling on your past or your guilt. It's only the here and now that you have to focus on. I think it's a good line to represent her mentality as well. It's got just a tiny twinge of suicidalness. Now, I'm no psychologist, but referring to the finality of life with a loaded firearm pointed at your own temple while jokingly making shooting sounds is probably a red flag. I like it, show. It's a good first line from Jinx. She continues, jokingly calling her wanted poster her calling card and pretending to be proud of it. I like it. It shows just how cynical she is from the course her life has took. She didn't mean for any of this to happen, but here we are. It did happen. And now the cope is coming in the form of a sarcastic, dry laugh. We cut to a robot arm brandishing a knife. The two things that this faction represents, getting chromed the fuck up, and, well, violence. Three goons, their leader Smeech, and his accountant are all in a car heading to their next target. They want to steal a quote-unquote stash from another Chem Baron. Now, Smeech is an interesting character in-game and in the meta. In-game, he's a beautiful Yordle chromed up with Chemtech appendages. He has a very cool design that the animators honestly did a great job utilizing. Someone with this tech would, of course, bend their arms, hands, and legs in these unnatural ways because to them it would be normal. To them it would just be efficient. It's creepy, but it fits perfectly for his personality and makes sense practically. It's just a cool fucking character design. Look at how he scurries around. He looks like a fucking rat. With that complimenting his role in the story, I actually think he's one of the gems in the show, as ugly a stone as that would be. So the scene starts with Accountant Goon questioning this hasty move they're about to make. Apparently this faction has been losing to the other Chem Barons, and this guy sees their success odds as at least bad. Smeech, after hearing these concerns, gives us his perspective, characterizing him pretty damn well. You ever wonder why fat brains like you always end up working for grunts like me? You only use half your head, plotting moves, calculating odds. You know how Silco took over the lanes? With his bare teeth. Until I'm in Silco's chair, your only job is to make the numbers work. He's someone who believes that, at the end of the day, force power is all that really matters. Regardless of position, regardless of money, regardless of numbers, killing your opponent always leaves you the victor. If you're the last one standing, you win. Odds be damned. Later on, we get to see what happens when this principle is turned on him, and then we really get to see him scurry like a funny looking rat. So, this group of 5 get out of their car to raid this opposing faction's building. It's literally her face. Tacky. And I guess the numbers really are in the shitter if your raiding party is only 3 goons and an accountant. They arrive finding the place filled with the Gray, a weak pepper spray like gas described as factory smog that's, I guess, usually trapped underground. Seeing the effects of it, Smeech, our power-focused villainous gremlin, immediately gets intimidated, stuttering a bit as he orders the accountant to go on ahead, report back. He goes in, observing the gas's effects even more, then a shrouded figure reveals itself. The thing's eyes glow, the accountant panics, and the scene cuts. Now, we find out later that it's the Caitlyn strike team gassing places in the attempt to find Jinx and, I guess, dismember Shimmer. The Shimmer angle doesn't really have a place in this season, but it's mentioned a few times, so, well, there you go. It's not impossible for the accountant guy to get away from the Overwatch squad here. I'm just surprised that he does. This area was clearly their target, and we later see how they clear a building with Caitlyn being shockingly trigger happy. Why show him get seen in a oh he's fucked cutaway transition for him to just be a-okay a few scenes later? I suppose the point of this scene is the Gray and the strike team, not logistics and the investment in a character nobody really gives a shit about, but whatever, the scene doesn't care, so let's just move on. Sevika, Silco's right hand, has gathered the remaining Chem Barons in an attempt to unify against Piltover, saying these turf wars have to stop. Topside is the real enemy, us killing each other is playing right into their hands. Our best shot is to put aside these petty squabbles and join forces. One of the Chem Barons responds, they outnumber us 4-1. Might matter up there, but they don't know the first thing about fighting the fissures. What's odd to me is the motivation to band together to fight Piltover. There's a chance Sevika knew about the deal Silco was going to make, and the vote for the invasion was uprooted by Caitlyn. So why the we're at war talk? If the invasion was happening, this motivation would make more sense, but it isn't. At most, the disruption of Shimmer would be a concern, but that's hardly a 4-1 war in the fissures problem. Now, to clarify, I'm not against Sevika wanting to unify the Barons for the good of Zon, but it's not framed that way. They're acting like the invasion has happened and they need to deal with the results of it. Perhaps Sevika's plan is to kill the strike team, which could cause a war, but none of that is said or even hinted at. That'd be a case of me writing the script for the show. The world building just doesn't really seem to have a through line. I'm not really sure what, why, and how all the pieces at play are being moved, and the show seems to rely on chaos to be the explanation, making it very hard to get invested as the stakes for any of those involved are fuzzy blurs at best. I don't know why they're fighting each other, how any of them can win, or what it even looks like if one does. Christ, I don't even know these two's names. But the episode is spending a whole lot of time on this whole affair. So here's a thought I had to kind of better frame the Chem Baron Wars. What if the Barons knew all about the deal Silco had with Jace, through Sevika telling them rumors or notes or whatever? And the point of the meeting is an attempt to come together and convince Piltover that they still want the deal. Each Baron wants to be the head of it, of course, and this is what caused the battles between them. Negotiations at this Sevika meeting break down, with everyone knowing the Baron that catches and delivers Jinx will have all the sway with Piltover. Sevika is then forced to contend with betraying Jinx and her we don't want to give up our people principles versus achieving Silco's dream of a nation of Zon. She makes her choice, saving Jinx from Smeech, and perhaps this leads to the strike team, who is right next door, getting involved in the fight. They take on casualties, forcing Piltover's hand and causing the invasion in Act 2. Now, Much more would have to be changed, but I think in terms of world building, this would fix and clarify the stakes of all the factions involved. Not to mention, it would focus on the major factor that should be at play but isn't. The deal Silco almost got made, the peace agreement Jace was on the verge of achieving, but instead we get this confused battle over a metaphorical chair without any real clarification on what the metaphor even means. It's such a shame, given how well thought out the world and its politics was in Season 1. Like, I don't even know if Jace knows Silco is dead. He never mentions him or the deal, and we never get any thoughts about Zaun at all from him. We didn't think that Jace's reaction to Silco's death was worth screen time. This was the equivalent of a peace treaty between Israel and Palestine, and it's not even mentioned once by him? Really? Oh well. The scene continues with Smeech having another solution. Rather than uniting to fight Piltover, he just wants to give them Jinx, saying it's all they really want. Sevika responds, "We don't hand over our people." "We? You don't do much of anything now, Magpie. Bird without her wings, just a funny-looking rat. You help me put a bow on Baby Blue for our friends upstairs, I'll cut you a brand new puncher. Top of the line, all the fixes. Think on it, but I promise, it's the last offer you're gonna get." Now, I don't have a lot to say here. His threat, offer, and plan are all solid and make sense with the stakes. The way he speaks reinforces his character and arrogant, ratty personality. Honestly, his dialogue might be the best in the whole show. Like, I don't even know who really compares. If we throw out coherency, maybe it's Victor, but God, would that be a handicap. Ekko's is all pretty solid, but it doesn't quite have that flair that Smeech's language has. You know what? I'm gonna put my flag on this hill. Smeech has the best written dialogue in Arcane Season 2. Fight me. I'm sticking by it. We cut to the next scene with Sevika in the office of the last drop. She drinks the last drop of her flask, tossing it to the side after a door slam and a sigh. She tries to reattach a robot arm prosthetic, getting frustrated while doing the rather handicap-unfriendly task. Some could say that she really could use a hand. I'm sorry. Smashing the screwdriver into the desk, she angrily says, "I can't believe you're dead and I'm still mopping up your messes," glaring at Silco's chair. Jinx taunts her for talking to dead people, a trait that she used to have that has seemingly just disappeared in this season, and Sevika asks if she's here to finish her off. Jinx responds wittily with, "Haven't I done you enough favors?" flopping onto the desk haphazardly. Sevika picks up a bottle, thinking she might attack her, but as she starts talking about the frustrating elements to serving Silco, Sevika's anger disappears, and the bottle is dropped. They reminisce over their frustrations with him, leading to their topic of his death. She angrily throws a chair, wondering what they're even supposed to do now. All the plans, everything they built, falling apart the moment he died. Jinx responds with her answer, "Watch it all burn." Jinx leaves, and the Smeech gang of 4 people reveal themselves. I guess they followed Sevika to hopefully find hints for finding Jinx. Smart. They begin tailing Jinx, and the scene ends. Now, I like this whole scene. Without being on the nose, it shows how both of them have lost their purpose without Silco. Jinx loved him as a father, and Sevika as a leader. For the both of them, but mainly Sevika, her anger over purpose and plans shows that she believed in the future he envisioned. Beyond the enjoyment of the fight or power, she believed in what they were doing, even if, in my opinion, she wouldn't be able to explain why. All his plans, everything we built, what the hell are we supposed to do now? This anger over a loss of purpose, or a subconscious realization that everything they did very well might be pointless. Hence the "I need to act," even if it's just slamming objects, tossing chairs, growling, or yelling. She doesn't want it to be pointless. She wants to act, but isn't sure how. Jinx, on the other side of this coin, by how sad she's acting, how cynical, it's as if she's already accepted it was pointless and given up, with the "watch it all burn" line kind of solidifying it. The scene actually portrays their positions and thoughts quite well. Good job, show. We've actually set up Sevika becoming the leader of Zaun. Well, the motivation has been set up. Shame that most of this is going to happen off screen entirely. We're not going to see any of it. Could have made it a whole plot line, the rise of Sevika. I would have really liked that, but we don't. It happens off screen. Moving on, the next scene begins with Victor. He wakes up in his cocoon of Arcane to the sound of Sky's voice. After struggling a bit, he breaks free, stumbling over to his cane. On touch, some of the Arcane infects it, and he approaches Jace, who, clearly exhausted, is asleep at his desk. He wakes up, shocked to see Victor, and due to his body transforming into the same material as the Hex Core, says, "My god." Victor asks, "What am I?" And Jace saves the previous line with, You're alive. You're alive." He gives Victor a hug with a huge smile. It's a very human moment, interrupted by Victor describing how he feels.
I sense a charge, a potential.
I like this beginning bit. Jace's reaction and his lines really show us how much he cares for Victor, and Victor's lines seem just a little off. They seem different in some way. So it's here that the conflict begins. Victor looks at the cocoon, his body, and then asks Jace about the Hex Core. "I was supposed to die. You promised to destroy the Hex Core." Jace, hurt by this line, shakes his head, looking almost desperate as he says, No, don't you see? It's not as bad as it killed Sky, Jace." Shocked by this reveal, Jace takes a step back. She had such dreams, as did we once. Now, this is where the dialogue feels a little off to me. It reminds me of the bullet point problem we discussed in the previous episode. Rather than responding to this position-destroying news that the Hex Core killed Sky, Jace moves on from it, arguing the same conclusion that was quite literally just debunked. Heimerdinger was right, and yes, it is as bad as we think. Actually, for you specifically, it's measurably worse than you think. It killed Sky. You didn't know that, and now you do. It is indeed worse than you think. Anyways, Jace responds, saying he's going to resign from the council. He believes his place is with Victor in the lab. "We'll make this right. Together." Victor responds, "I must say goodbye to this place now, and to you. Our paths diverged a long time ago. It was affection that held us together. Do you think it's so easy to turn your back on your whole city while it looks to you for salvation? To cling to principles while your best friend bleeds out in your arms? I never asked for this. Goodbye, Jace." Now, where to start here? When I first watched this scene, something felt off to me. Aside from Jace bullet pointing past Sky's death, it took a bit of thinking to kind of pinpoint it. The split of Jace and Victor does feel very quick, and a lot of people call it rushed, but I don't think that's the main reason it doesn't quite feel right. I think it's our understanding of Victor's goals, his decision to leave, and what he does post-divorce. If he wanted to understand what happened to himself scientifically, then staying with Jace would be for the best. If he had lost his purpose, or he needed to find a reason to live in his new form, then I think talking to Singe could make sense as well. The problem is, none of this is really alluded to. So as the viewer, I have no idea what he's thinking, or what his plans are, or what he's going to end up doing. If they wanted to have him following magical footsteps, a mirage of Sky and her voice, why not have those be heavily present in the Jace-Victor breakup? Because genuinely, I thought he was going to go to Singed after this, and that's how Singed would become relevant to the story. But that isn't what happens, forcing a viewer to wonder, well, in hindsight at least, was Victor's plan to just wander around the ghetto? And if the answer is the Arcane infecting his mind, then would it not gain infinitely more value by staying and working with Jace? Victor seems to be the one that's anti-Hextech here, and that means he's in charge of his own mental faculties right now, right? So his end result of wandering around the ghetto just doesn't follow. It's confusing. But I guess the show just doesn't have time for all that, as none of what I just mentioned is even remotely addressed. The scene opens up with people being led into the Firefly camp, blindfolded to preserve the secrecy of its location. We pan to Ekko and Bat Guy discussing logistics. Now, he probably has a name, but he's not relevant to the story, so I really can't be bothered to look it up. They talk about capacity issues and the security risk of new people. Ekko states, "We're not turning people away." That guy continues with the pseudo world building, bullet pointing, "We finally got rid of Silco, just for another one to take his place." Now, none of these drama points affect anything in the story. The capacity problems and security problems are just filler, but the "we got rid of Silco just for another to appear" is just an incorrect line. I'm not sure why he says this. The Barons are fighting for this title. No one has won, and no one is in charge. Saying we finally got rid of Silco just for Chaos to take over the lanes would have made a lot more sense here. Once again, though, this is a conversation that only really exists to show Ekko as the hero type, and that he and Heim are still together, I suppose. The plot for half an episode falls down in the form of an arcane infected leaf. Ekko looks it over, and the scene jumps to Heim's new lab or room in the tree somewhere, I don't know. Heim and Ekko discuss the tree's infection, Heim calling it troubling, and Ekko gives us lines that I would describe as better world building if we avoid the future acts where the tree is never mentioned again. It's pretty direct and definitely telling, not showing, but in comparison to the capacity security issues, it's a much better example of adding depth to your world. That tree means so much. It's our food, fresh air. We built our whole identity around it. It's not lost yet, lad. If there's a means of preservation, by golly, we'll find it. I've seen something of this nature before. And cuts. I wouldn't call it the most graceful of story beat starts, but the show once again doesn't have the time to really develop anything. We get a line allowing us to know why the tree means anything, which is nice, but we don't really do anything with Heim and Ekko. I wouldn't call these intro scenes characterizing in the same way the Jinx intro or the Smeech's intro are. But I don't need to keep saying that the show feels rushed. Let's just hope that there isn't any huge chunks of wasted time this episode. Alright, Heim and Ekko have their quest and begin their adventure. Just for reference, this intro was 1 minute and 14, 19, 9, or 4? I can't read my own handwriting. Anyways, the scene is very fast. It feels very quick. Heim and Ekko are in the vents of the academy. Sneaking into this building is just a thing they can do. I guess Heim memorized the vent blueprints. Maybe he made them himself, who knows. Heim is wearing a hood and a mask and honestly resembles Kennen from League of Legends. He pretends to be a spy, with Ekko acting as the straight man. Heim is characterized as a bit of a goofball, and Ekko as more serious. They get to Jace's lab, where Jace mistakes his small form for a child, charging up his hammer to kill the thing. After the confusion, Heim introduces Jace and Ekko. Jace offers them all some tea, and they begin to discuss the infection of the tree. The dialogue flows nicely, and they even make use of the security line for a joke here, making it just a little better a line. Ekko asks if any of the plants survived, referencing the experiments done on plants in Season 1, and Jace responds, "They weren't what we were trying to save." Bit of an odd line, given the plants had no relation to saving Victor as far as the scenes in the show go, but perhaps off-screen they were helpful? I don't know. Jace continues, "But this pattern, how could it be there and here?" Heim and Ekko both get up, moving towards the Victor cocoon. "Oh no," Heim says. "Where's Victor?" Now, this line is a little confusing. First, let's start with implication. When writing, well, anything, you've got to be careful with what you imply, not just what you say literally, because sometimes you can lead the listener astray. It's not always a bad thing, but I think in this case, it is. This line implies Victor leaving caused this infection on the tree, which I suppose technically he did, but it isn't really that. It's actually the generator that's deep underground. This line, even if misleading, draws attention to Victor as if Heim has any idea what's happened to him. He shouldn't know anything about the state of Victor or the cocoon, unless that conversation happened off screen, which could be the implication of the many teacups, that they have been here for a long time, but Ekko trying topside tea implies the opposite. And this is disregarding the fact that the show didn't want us to see Heim's reaction or share any of his thoughts to Victor's near death slash life changing experience. I feel like he would have many interesting things to say on the matter, one of which being we have to find him, but the show doesn't acknowledge the relationship between Heim and Victor at all. In fact, beyond this line right here, this season doesn't really care that Heim and Victor should give a shit about each other. I I get that we don't have time for our characters, but goddamn, I'd have really liked to see Heim receive this news, you know? The scene cuts to Victor showing us why that line is there at all, and we move on to his scene. Victor, with his robe and his cane, are now in Zon. In particular, a very rough part of Zon. People are getting robbed, beaten up, scrounging in garbage, and praying to Jana murals. Victor is basically seeing a lot of people who could really use a messiah. I think the murals are a bit on the nose personally, but I see what you're doing, show. The group of druggies from season 1 notice his shiny cane, and he goes down an alley following a voice and magical footsteps. I have absolutely no idea why the Arcane, or maybe his dead girlfriend, is leading him. I know they didn't date, is leading him down the drug dens of Zon. It just is, I guess. Now, I would have had Victor go to Singed and develop some perspective on life through him, then after days of experiencing Zon, come to the conclusion that he wants to help these lost souls. But that would involve characters having non-plot pushing dialogue, and we don't have time for that. So rather than discovering Victor's answer through Singed, we follow magical footsteps. The herd of druggies begin tailing him, and the scene ends. Oh, here's a fun question, right? Like, what happens if they didn't follow him? What happens if they just didn't see the cane he had, right? Like, does he become Jesus at all? Like, what would have happened? Would he have just been led here and just stood here cinematically? Like, there's no real point to this question. I just think it's funny. We move on to Jinx in the hideout of the last drop. The scene speeds up as she dismantles the boxing game machine for parts. We find out a bit later it's an arm for Sevika. We've seen her make things like this before, so creating this kind of falls in line with her abilities. A couple hours might be a little fast, or perhaps a little long, as the child and Smeech are just patiently waiting for her to finish. Lucky enough for her, she's able to, before the gas starts flooding in from the outside. The Overwatch squad can just target specific buildings. We see them do this before, but I still think it's a little convenient. We get a reference to Fiddlesticks, and that's pretty neat. Jinx hides in the rafters as the Overwatch squad enters the building. She sees Vi and has a Tism mind flash. Right. This was very prevalent in Season 1, wasn't it? I guess all the extra trauma made it go away, mostly. Christ, now that I think about it, we used to talk a lot to our murder victims, didn't we? Hell, wouldn't it make more sense that Silco get added to these group chats? Instead, Season 2 says she's gotten better? That's odd. To the point of being a bit of a problem. She should be more unstable from Silco's death, not less. But she's more functional now? Huh. I suppose if you had her murder victims on screen all the time, it'd be quite difficult to make her a... Anyways, the gas affects Jinx, hurting her vision and making it difficult to breathe. Her shimmer powers probably up her resistance to it, I don't know. But the Overwatch squad sweeps the room. Vi finds Jinx's goggles on the ground, and Jinx above her has a clear shot and begins to aim. A tear falls as she struggles to shoot, and by the time it hits Vi, causing her to look up, Jinx doesn't shoot and repositions. She ends up turning on the target range after a bit of hide and seek, providing a distraction for her to escape. Caitlyn gets frustrated by the lack of finding Jinx and fires around at one of the targets in what feels like an angry panic attack, an action that really shows how unstable she is right now. There's ways of showing anger without making the person feel radically incompetent. This isn't just a bullet, it's a magically amped up bullet. And there's a reason firing shots, even if it's not aimed at someone, is an illegal thing. That shot could have easily gone through the wall and hit somebody. They're in a city right now, guys. Any junior officer would have known this, but Caitlyn is angry and in her feelings right now, so I guess we'll just give her a pass. Jinx not taking the shot becomes a problem as well, but not till her motivation is revealed later this episode. Once again, implication being the culprit. The tear showing she cares, that she doesn't want to kill Vi, it I don't know, it would make some practical sense to not take the shot here, as she would likely lose the 1v5, but the tear falling all cinematically implies the former, that it's her care for Vi that's stopping her. So when she says this,
to finish what's left of my family.
In the same episode, I guess I get just a little confused. Would it not have been better to see her aim the shot no tear, then she sees the enforcers and puts the gun away, implying that, well, she wouldn't win. It's a bad idea to take a shot here. I guess it's not as emotionally loaded that way, not quite as much icing, but if this is her motivation, then I just feel like it makes more sense this way. Jinx makes it outside and yells in frustration. She runs less than roughly 30 steps and gets ambushed. I mentioned this to emphasize how close the enforcers are to this very loud scene that's about to unfold. The scene that is almost explicitly filled with Jinx noises. So let's break it down. After her short earshot distance run, Jinx gets punched in the face. What a callback. Her gun gets knocked away and she is slammed on a wall. Surrounded, dazed, and still choking on gas, she's pinned there by one of Smeech's goons. Smeech crawls down from his perch and starts talking. Right through their fingers. You must be part eel. Just means I can up my finder's fee. There's always a deal to be struck. So this confirms a few things. One, they had eyes on her this whole time, and two, they were the ones who called the Overwatch team to come investigate. One of the goons searches her for weapons and finds a canister/grenade. He tosses it to the side in a random direction. This is extremely important and could have resulted in Jinx's death. Smeech threatens Jinx, commenting on her blubbering peepers. He asks if Silco has ever even seen that, to which Jinx replies, twice, when I met him and when I killed him, shocking Smeech and confirming that nobody knows how Silco died. I also find this shocking, as I mentioned in the previous video, but there's no need to rehash that. She throws his line back at him, returning a threat, and Smeech backs off, intimidated. It's a good line. It's a nice little piece of banter here. A shot is fired from the alley, causing the group to freeze for a second. Smeech, immediately after, reacts, activating his arm to spin. Hey now, that's actually pretty cool. Right, like, if it's spinning fast enough, it acts as like a deflector for any bullet shot at him. I don't know if it works, like, logistically, but it's a neat idea. Sevika reveals herself with Jinx's pistol, firing off all but a single round. I actually wish it was all the rounds in the mag, because Jinx throws the present at her, and she tosses the gun in return back. I guess she just knew what to do here. Not a huge complaint, but if the gun was out of ammo, Sevika getting it back to Jinx makes a lot more sense. Maybe I'm wrong, though, and it's her missing that gets her to toss the gun to Jinx. I don't know how she knew the present would act as, like, a tool to fight with. I don't know how she knew that. They make a point of showing Smeech laugh at the missed shot, so maybe that's the angle. If so, then my bad. Jinx fires the last shot as Sevika attaches the gift, a robotic arm built with the Jinx flare. I won't get logistical here, but it's lucky that everybody knew what to do and that everything kind of worked out in the way that it did. Out of ammo, Jinx dodges the attacks of a chromed up goon. The child throws a grenade that, conveniently rolled to her hiding place, and it explodes into paint and confetti. Jinx reloads as the goon is processing what the heck just happened and shoots him. Right, so this is my first real complaint. You guys remember that scene where a child puts little shiny blue balls in a monkey and, not knowing what would happen, sends it in and it explodes, causing an event she didn't intend? Right, so this show explicitly tells us that these two are similar, so in the interest of that comparison, allow me to re-edit this scene for what could have happened here. You guys get what I'm trying to say here? Imagine if this was a frag grenade, not a paint one. The child had no way of knowing and could have just as easily tossed a real live grenade in between the two of them. Could have just blown them up. That very well might have happened from her perspective. She really has no way of knowing. How lucky that isn't what happened. The child has now saved Jinx's life. What's her name again? Oh, right, the show hasn't told us or characterized her in any way. Awesome. I'm glad she's saving our main characters. Jinx does a finger gun to the child and looks very cool while doing so. We move on to the Sevika versus Smeech section, and I'm not going to do a play-by-play here, but honestly it's a very well put together sequence. It shows, not tells, the fun dynamic between Jinx and Sevika. Jinx being chaotic, unpredictable, and quirky, while Sevika being serious, practical, and quite intimidating. They're a great pair, honestly. It's a shame that this dynamic isn't really a huge focus for the show. I really enjoyed it here. Smeech ends up getting torn apart after some solid dialogue, once again spitting his words back in his face, and we see Jinx's enjoyment of chaos and brutality. After the mauling, metal clangs, bullet shots, and music, fireworks launch out of the arm, exploding in a classic Jinx fashion. Now, before we talk about this loud exchange, I want to talk about the child a little bit more. So, throughout the fight, the show cuts to her reactions, and when I was watching it for the first time, it kind of confused me. Like, who is this kid? Why do we care, and why do we constantly keep showing her reactions to things? Why is she saving one of our main characters? Is she an audience insert there to show our own reactions? If she's going to be a character, why haven't we tried to make her one? Stray thoughts for now, but it'll clear up as the show continues. They bullet point some dialogue, with Sevika asking, "What are you planning?" And Jinx responding with, "To finish what's left of my family." I guess watching a little gremlin get torn to pieces cleanse your system? I don't know. Whatever, no need to rehash that. The accountant squirms and the scene cuts. You guys remember how the Overwatch squad was tipped off by Smeech and how Jinx escaped, walked less than 30 steps, and got into that fight? Now, recall all these noises, right? I won't rehash it, but gunshots, metals, blah 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 blah, fireworks, right? Noises that I have already put into the category of Jinx sounds. Now, enough kind of rehashing. It's ridiculous that the Overwatch squad didn't hear this fight and investigate it. I don't think there's a feasible argument for it either. I don't know what they were doing. They just don't show up, which makes one wonder why we even have the gas scene at all. It accomplishes nothing but muddying the waters on Jinx's stated motivation, and it's like 4 minutes long. I guess it shows Caitlyn being unstable, but I'd argue this hurts her character even if it ends up portraying her feelings. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why bother with 4 minutes of this if they don't even show up here? It's very odd. It's just confusing to me. But whatever, they don't care, so let's just move on. Victor finds himself following Arcane footsteps. Maybe he's retracing his past steps, or the Arcane just wants him here. I don't know. There doesn't really seem to be a rhyme or reason, but he ends up in the drug dens from Season 1. Its denizens are sickly, deformed, and quite pitiful. More creature than human at this point. The Arcane shimmers in front of him, and the drug urchins make their move, hoping to rob Victor of his cane. Victor, clearly not as human as he once was, views them with immense pity. Not fear, not worry, not anger, just pity. He reaches his hand out, really pumping out the Jesus vibes, and touches the recognizable Season 1 urchin. This Arcane radiates from Victor and into the urchin. All of his blemishes, infections, and diseases disappear, and he's left looking human, healthy, and with a twinge of the Arcane. The urchin looks up with immense gratitude, and Victor sees Sky approving of this action. The scene ends with all of the urchins kneeling to their newfound messiah. As an isolated scene, I honestly think it's pretty cool. It's a creative take on the lore from Victor that uses the elements of this world to create a faction that worships him and his goals. It makes sense from the perspective of one of the healed. If I was one of these people, if I was Sallow, I'd probably worship him too. He just saved my whole existence. Sadly, as cool a scene as it is, there's some problems. Mostly the why, where, and what. So, why is he wandering into Zon? Why are these magical footprints just appearing? Where are we going? What are they? And what are we even planning on doing? Clearly, the Arcane or Sky or future Victor, I don't know, is leading him here, but it's not clear to me as to why. What is the grand scheme of the cult? Is the Arcane just wanting to infect as many people as possible? It seems like Sky or Victor are in control, wanting to help people with these newfound powers. And this end result, the cult, only goes hive mind no free will after Jace kills Victor, and Victor has the free will equals conflict speech in his head as he's dying. Like, if Jace doesn't do this, there's a world where Victor keeps healing people till he, quote unquote, runs out of power, quoting Singed for that, and what even happens then? Everybody just lives out their lives healed and happy? And because none of these mechanics are properly addressed, even the beginning of this Victor arc is built on shaky ground. Right, but we're at the start, so we'll dive into that more later on. The scene ends and we get a clip of Singed making Warwick. So, to sum up this episode, I'd label it as mostly setup, with a few parts, in hindsight, kind of just being wastes of screen time. This episode is definitely needed, though, as it really gets the plot rolling for a lot of characters. Nothing too egregious occurs, just regarding the Overwatch squad being deaf. Most of the issues are smaller, more meta, or dealt with in future episodes. Honestly, I don't have much to say. We have to see how they handle everything that they set up in the next episodes. Hope it wasn't too long or tedious, but I can't help it. Can't just skip to episode 3. But trust me, when we get there, that one's gonna be a real fucking banger. That shit is a mess. Now, thanks for kind of hanging around, watching this show, and it'll be around a month or so for me to get this next episode out, but I hope to see you there.